Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined now by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, you've campaigned extensively on the subject of global health, and issues like HIV, AIDS, malaria and TB have been high-profile causes. But how big an issue in global health terms do you think mental health is?
I think a lot of people want to hide it. Many of us don't say there is a stigma. I mean, anytime you have someone say, I'm going to see my psychiatrist, I mean, it's almost a swear word. When I say to you, I think you're crazy, go and see your psychiatrist. We don't think that mental illness is illness. You know, we think it is, I think it's like what people used to think of so-called leprosy. You know, you don't mention it. I had TB when I was young, and at that time too, quite frequently people didn't sort of publicize that they had TB, because it seemed like, well, it was a disgrace, and mental illness is still seen as you really have something wrong with you. I mean, and you've got to be put in a straitjacket. We think once you mention that I mean, I have a breakdown, people, you know, and I think that then affects what gets to be done. Do we really provide sufficiently for that? And so it is a crisis.
Now, there are not many people in this world who have been oppressed and then experienced what it's like to be free. Can you describe for me, first of all, what it feels like to be a second-class citizen in your own land, but then one day to suddenly be free?
Well, how do you tell someone? It's almost like the thing we were talking about. I mean, we were talking about illness earlier. It's like talking to someone who is blind, and you want to tell them about the beautiful sunshine and sunrise. You want to tell them about the beautiful flowers, or the color, the wonderful colors of the sea. Well, I mean, you're talking language that doesn't make sense. And imagine, well, Beethoven, I mean, one always wonders really how he got to compose his music when he was deaf. How do you tell someone who is deaf about a beautiful symphony? I think it's the same when you try to explain to somebody something quite as earth-shattering as becoming free. What was it like to be unfree? Again, I think one has to use images. One of the images that I have is of, I went in, my father had sent me to town in one of our cities, and black people lived in one part, segregated, and town was town for white people. And extraordinarily, actually, for Indians, Indians were allowed to live in the town, but not to share any of the other facilities. And I was driving past a white school, and I saw two black kids scavenging in the dustbin of the white school, where they were able to pick up perfectly good fruit because the government was giving school feeding to white kids who really didn't need it because their parents were giving them, and not to black kids. And I think it was almost a kind of vignette of what it means to be deprived, not to be part of the decision-making process. Or when I went into a shop with my father, who was a school principal, and in the black community, a person who was very highly respected, and I was maybe 7 years of age, and we get into this shop, and a slip of a girl, white girl, behind the counter said to my father, "Yes, boy, you know, how do you describe to people those daily instances of your dignity just being trodden underfoot, where you are treated as a non-entity, really?" And they described us as non-white, non-European, as if we were non-persons, which in very many respects, in their view, we were non-persons. And then just this one day, 27th of April 1994, voting for the first time in a democratic election. And you just wanted to yell, "Yippee!" You know, and things that, yes, I mean, the blue of the sky looked a different color. I mean, it was still blue, but it had a new sort of glory about it. And I remember coming from voting, going back to Bishop's Court, the Archbishop's residence, official residence, and the gardener, also a black guy, had just come also away from voting, and as he walked across to go to his apartment, he was just shaking his fist. I mean, you know, it's almost something that is ineffable. You can't put into words. They asked me on that day, and I said, well, it's like falling in love, you know, all of those emotions that you get when the girl you love thinks she also loves you. It was just a fantastic moment, and you know, when you have shackles on your wrists and on your ankles, and suddenly there's someone with a magic formula, and at the same time, for all of these people, millions of us, those shackles fall away, and you are able to stand upright, and you realize, hey, I am me, and I am free.
Now, you've spoken through your life about the importance of forgiveness. Yeah. And by definition, forgiveness is a state of mind, as well as an action in words. How difficult is it for people to truly inside forgive their oppressors?
In many ways, almost impossible. I mean, when you've had your dignity trodden underfoot and your face has been rubbed in the dust, it's almost theoretically it's impossible to forgive people who used you as a doormat and wiped their boots on you and treated you as if you were nothing. Sort of cerebrally, you say in my head, I will never forgive. But then you see, that's not how you operate really. In part it is that, well, I mean, you don't work it through logically. It's a lot of it is emotions. It's how your solar plexus feels, how you breathe, and you realize actually that not to forgive is to lock yourself in to a position where you are forever a victim and you are at the mercy of the perpetrator. Whereas when you forgive, it is letting go and you become free and you realize it. Even your physical well-being tells you. I mean, when you're angry with somebody, physically it shows. I mean, your blood pressure gets up. You breathe in a particular kind of way, and you're tense. You forgive, and suddenly, I mean, it is like a heavy weight just thrown off your shoulders, and you can breathe normally, gently, and you feel even in the tum-tum that you're okay, and so in very many ways it is the best thing that you can do for yourself. But it's also the best thing that you can do for the other, giving them the opportunity. I mean, obviously, they have to appropriate this gift. You give them a gift. They may accept the gift, or they may reject it when you say, "I forgive you." But it is like a room where you have closed the windows and drawn the curtains. That doesn't mean the sun is not shining outside. It doesn't mean there is no fresh air outside, just because this room is dank. But it is up to you. I offer you the sunshine and the fresh air, but it's up to you to open the windows and let that fresh air come in, the fresh air of forgiveness, the bright light of the sunshine to come into the room. And you know, the one forgiven is also set free. Set free from a past that has manacled them, and you allow them to become a little more like what God wants them to be.
Now, we live in a world where the concept of justice is sought after and in some cases valued above forgiveness. Do you think that actually forgiveness should come before justice?
You know, the trouble is almost always, when people speak about justice, they speak about retributive justice, where the fundamental purpose is to punish the miscreant. But there is another kind of justice, restorative justice, where justice says the main purpose is not punitive. It is not to try to punish this other one. It is saying the offense has broken a relationship and it has caused a breach between the perpetrator and the victim, and really, in our concept, in the community. And so restorative justice says we're not aiming so much to punish, and you may still, for instance, if you have stolen my pen, it'll be a good thing to return my pen, you know. But much more is that you are trying to restore a relationship. You are trying to heal. I mean, when you look, in fact, at most of our penal systems, they are so intent on punishing the offender that they've found, actually, I mean, that they are not working in terms of being able to stop future acts of crime. I mean, just look at the levels of recidivism. I mean, people who go to jail are more likely to be repeat offenders after that. And in the United States, they begun, I mean, the University of Wisconsin has begun, they have an international center for forgiveness, and have been looking at how they might begin to influence the penal systems so that you set out to say it isn't the case that once a thief, always a thief, once a murderer, always a murderer, that each one of us still has the capacity to become better, and that you try to help heal the relationship between the perpetrator and the victim, and they've been doing some of that, and I think, I mean, that we need to give a chance to restorative justice, and not emphasize as much as we do retributive justice. But, you know, this is not, in fact, to say you are choosing the easy option. But it has to be the case that when someone has been the victim of a crime, yeah, the perpetrator as it were, has to pay their price to society. But that's not all. You know, they are not just an offender. this is a person who may be a father, a husband, and the fact that they've gone wrong does not determine who they are forever and ever. You know, they can, and there are many instances where people have changed. They can change for the better, provided we put into place the systems that will be supportive, where we do not, in our anger, consign people, as it were, to hell. That because you went wrong, forever, you are done for. We've got to say, you made a mistake. Yes, you pay to the extent that you can pay for having made that mistake. Perhaps, yes, by a limitation of your freedom. But much more, we should be looking to how can we help you become a productive member of society? How can we help your family? How can we reintegrate you into a community where what you did has broken relationships?
And just finally now,
yippee!
Nelson Mandela described you as a voice for the voiceless. So I just want to know who and what has inspired you to be a voice for those in need?
My mother is one of the first to have been an influence on my life. She wasn't educated much. I mean, she went to elementary school, but she was an extraordinarily generous, compassionate, caring person. But I've also had people like Trevor Huddleston, who was an incredible stalwart in his opposition to apartheid. And I am one of those who fell under his spell. And I thank God for people like him. But there are many, many others. And as I grow older, I realize just how much I owe to other people who, at the time, I mean, I wasn't aware that they were making such an impression on me. I mean, you know, I sometimes tell people I picked up maybe in 8 or 9, I picked up a tattered copy of Ebony magazine, and it was describing how Jackie Robinson was the first African American to break into Major League Baseball. Now, I didn't know baseball from ping pong, but I mean, one of the things that has always remained with me is the story of this black man who, against incredible odds, made it, and being in the sort of circumstances one was in, that gave you an incredible lift, and it said, what is needn't always be. It can in fact be changed. So I was influenced by a multitude of people, and I just gave great thanks to God that I was exposed to all of those, and that to some extent I was able to respond positively to those influences.
Well, Archbishop, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
God bless you.